The only VPN to prove multiple times in court that they have no record of your internet activity is private internet access. Each time the judge said, show us the person's internet activity, and private internet access said, sorry, we don't have it. Their systems are also regularly audited by Deloitte to verify the no-log policy. And it's the only VPN with open source code, so the whole world can see that nothing is being logged. Private internet access is giving my audience 83% off, which is just $203 a month plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is down below. Welcome, everybody. It's almost going to be fall soon. I've got some upstate apple picking planned for this weekend. I'll tell you how that goes maybe on the Monday bonus show. Listen, after a debate, the candidates are always going to insist that they won. And the campaign is mostly going to, in public, insist that their candidate won. Although Robert F. Kennedy Jr., now a surrogate of Trump's, maybe one of his most prominent surrogates, did admit on Fox News 2 days ago that Trump did not win. But if you really want to get a sense of how the debate went, what you want to hear about are the behind the scenes comments from the staffers. And we now have a couple of different bits of insight into that I want to present to you. And it all paints the same picture of Trump staffers that are defeated and devastated, troubled that Trump wasn't able to do what they told him to do, which is do not start screaming and take the bait from Kamala Harris. Control yourself, stay on message. Wasn't able to do it. And that many Trump staffers are ready to just give up altogether and are privately conceding that Donald Trump completely blew it. Let's look at a couple of examples of this. Here is a report from MSNBC. I believe that this is John Heilemann talking about the behind the scenes from staffers. Take a listen to this.
Completely set him off. And as many people noted last night, that became then a rally version of Donald Trump, which is to say, talking about these obscure subjects that the average normie voter, as we like to call them here, who has a life and isn't tuned into this every day, says, what is he talking about? I don't even know. I don't understand what he's getting at here. So, John Heilemann, you're there in Philadelphia. You were in the spin room last night. What was the sense of things from both the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign afterward?
Well, good morning. And Joe talked before about how you watch something, old political consultant's trick, which is to watch debates with the sound off, and you can get a lot on the visual there. That's true. And it definitely was the case watching this debate. I'll tell you what else you could watch with the sound off and have a good sense of how things went last night. The activity in the spin room, where the Trump forces were dejected, defeated, deflated, dispirited. I picked
dilapidated, I would add, for alliterative purposes.
Just a photo last night of Matt Gaetz and Steve Miller coming in a few minutes before Donald Trump came into the spin room that went wildly viral on Twitter because it looked like sort of saggy road. It was like a shot of kind of this is what defeat looks like, folks. These people who've been talking about Donald Trump before the debate, like he's Muhammad Ali. He's the greatest debater in the history of presidential debates. He's done it more than anybody else ever. He's going to wipe the floor with her. There will be surprises, Jason Miller said. She won't know what hit her. And they looked like they had their dogs and cats eaten over the course of that debate. It's also the case, I will tell you, that I can report definitively that there is one point of agreement inside the Trump war room and the Harris war room, where both of those war rooms were looking at their dial groups in real time last night. The dial groups that the campaigns are looking at last night showed the same thing, that in real time, the undecided voters that they were looking at, Harris crushed Trump throughout the night. I mean, David Plouffe and David Binder are not champagne cork popping kind of guys. I'm not suggesting they actually popped any champagne corks last night, but their attitude was that of metaphorical champagne poppers last night. And the people in the Trump war room last night were popping something different, which I think might have been Klonopin or Maalox, one of the two.
So listen, the kind of zoom out on what happened here is, if you're a Trump staffer and you watch what's happening, I'm sure you don't like Kamala Harris. I'm sure on some level you really do believe that Kamala Harris's policies are the bad policies and Trump's policies, to the extent that he has them, understands them, or that you understand them, are better policies. Okay, I'll concede that on some level you really do believe that Trump is better than Harris. But it would be impossible to be a clear thinking, rational individual, sit through that debate and not come away terrified by how easily Kamala Harris was able to elicit this triggered reaction from Trump, where he starts sweating and gripping the lectern and yelling cats and dogs. She set such obvious traps. When she brings up out of nowhere, I would like you to go to a Trump rally and you'll see people bored and people leaving. That is so obvious a trap for Trump. And he failed on it. He started with, well, no one goes to your rallies, but then he goes further and he says the attendees are paid to be there. And he starts screaming and his upper lip is glistening and sweating. And it's hard to look at that and say, man, if in a debate stage format with just 3 people in the room, Trump is not able to control himself and you can elicit the exact emotional reaction you want, what's happening when he's in the room with Putin? And of course, we know what happens when he's in the room with Putin. He comes out and he goes, no, I don't know. I asked Putin about the hacking. He said he didn't do it. I believe him. He said it very, very strongly. Hillary Clinton pointed this out in 2016. And I know it's really popular to keep hating on Hillary. Not enough people seem to care when Hillary pointed it out in 2016. He is constitutionally not with it. He is not what it takes he doesn't have what it takes at a personality level to even be able to do this. And, back with, not to revisit 2016, but you had some sexism, this multi-decade smear campaign against Hillary Clinton, the media enamored with the ratings that Trump was generating, and then Trump won in 2016. Now, here we are many years later, and I'm hopeful that the country is just way more sick of this crap now than they were by November of 2016. I don't know. Here is another clip about reporting about what Trump staffers are saying, feeling, and doing. This one's from CNN.
My lead source tonight might be the main reason why Trump was knocked so off his game. We'll speak to him in a second. But I do want to start with some new reporting for you tonight on what happened in Philadelphia last night. I'm told that as soon as Donald Trump exited that debate stage, he immediately began quizzing those waiting in his viewing room about how the last 90 minutes had gone.
Now, this, of course, classic sign of insecurity. Did I do okay? Was it okay? How was it? Was it good? Was it not good? And of course, on some level, Trump knows that it was not good. But please, how did I do? Was it? Is it?
While several people praised him to his face, telling him that he did a great job, that's not what a lot of them are saying privately today. Instead, those around Trump have described what happened as a draw at best and a loss at worst. Several of them told CNN they were stunned that the former president failed to do a better job executing on the talking points that he had been preparing with his team for weeks against Vice President Harris, her record, her policy reversals. Trump had actually done more debate prep ahead of his first meeting with Harris than he did for his debate with President Biden earlier this summer. Yet they didn't believe that he made some of the central arguments against her, including this one about why she hasn't carried out the promises that she's making now in the last 3.5 years that she has been in office. He didn't go there until his closing argument that surprised a lot of people in his inner circle. Instead, they believe that Trump took the bait every single time Harris offered it up.
Yep.
While multiple Trump allies described what happened last night as a missed opportunity for the former president, they have since started downplaying the debate's significance overall, arguing that it won't shift his numbers with voters in states like Pennsylvania. Trump himself is non-committal today about a potential second debate, but almost every ally of his that I spoke with said they do ultimately believe he will agree to one.
All right. So I don't know that he's going to ultimately agree to a debate, but that's very interesting insight. We've been learning over the last 3 days since the debate, that Donald Trump tried much harder to actually win the debate against Kamala Harris. He didn't really seem to think he needed to prepare against Joe Biden, and maybe he didn't. And he didn't really seem to think that he needed to have a strategy as such against Joe Biden, and maybe he didn't. He just kind of told some lies and didn't get too agitated and Next thing you know, Joe Biden's out of the race. Trump recognized, I need to do something here. He had Tulsi Gabbard helping him to prep, which, by the way, that certainly seems to have backfired. Hopefully nobody asks Tulsi Gabbard for debate prep help anymore. And despite Trump's efforts to actually be prepared to defeat Kamala Harris in this debate, she didn't even sweat. I mean, it's not metaphorically. She was calm, cool, and collected. And Trump was visibly sweating from his upper lip the entire debate and looking pained. His eye was almost swollen shut. He was screaming, gripping the lectern. If there is to be a second debate, I don't know that there's really more Trump can even do to better prepare. But one of the things he is now alleging is that she cheated. When you lose, you claim the other side cheated. Let's talk about that. A flailing Donald Trump, absent any evidence, is now alleging that Kamala Harris was given the questions in advance by ABC News. And hilariously, he's so shaken by everything that happened, he actually says she was given the answers in advance. Not only is he lying that she was given the questions, he also says she was given the answers, which kind of doesn't make sense, or does it? Take a listen to this.
They had a rigged show with somebody that maybe even had the answers. I mean, I'll be honest. I watched her talk, and I said, she seems awfully familiar with the questions, and you get pretty good at that stuff after a while.
I absolutely love this. So let's put aside for a second the hilarious confusion between someone gave her the questions and someone gave her the answers. Okay, put that aside for a second. Trump says she seemed a little too familiar with the questions. I have shocking news for Donald Trump. She did have the answers in advance, and the questions generally were available to both of them. It's called prep. Abortion's going to come up. Whoa, I got one of the questions. Yeah, abortion is going to come up. Here are the answers. Trump won't say that he will veto a federal ban on abortion. Here is what he said at ABC dates. Here is 1, 2, 3 things right? It's called prep. The questions and the answers are available. It's not cheating. It's just called being prepared. And there's this funny irony where Trump always wants to frame it as, if it appears that I lost, someone must have cheated. It appears I lost the 2020 election. I didn't. They cheated and I actually really won. Well, maybe the explanation is simpler, which is you didn't actually convey a positive vision, nor did you prove that you deserve another 4 years based on the way your first term went and people voted a different way. Kamala Harris, she seemed prepared for the questions. She seemed to have the answers. She must have been given the information in advance. Well, kind of everybody was. Ukraine's going to come up. Abortion's going to come up. Tax policy is going to come up. What would you do about this is going to come up. And here is how you should be prepared to deal with it. So there's something almost comical where what the average person says is just prep, Trump considers some kind of unfair advantage. He could have had that same advantage. Could he actually focus during prep and come in ready to stick to what he was told you should do? He did everything the opposite. So next week, I'm guessing by next week we will know whether there's going to be a debate. The end of next week is going to be the 20th, I guess. If by the end of next week there isn't another debate scheduled, particularly since, by the 20th, it'll be only 10 days until the VP debate. And then from then on, you only have 4.5 weeks until Election Day. So I think we will know next week whether there will be another debate. Advice for Trump, if there is to be a second debate, try prepping. Try actually prepping and sticking to what you're supposed to do. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. We'll take a quick break and the Friday show will continue. Did you know there is only one VPN fully optimized for streaming 4K video and downloading large files? That's our sponsor, Private Internet Access. A VPN hides your IP address, allows you to make it look like your device is anywhere in the world. So this lets you stream content on Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max, not normally available in your home country. For instance, the show Friends is not available on Netflix in the US, but when I change my IP address to the UK, I can watch Friends on Netflix and a ton of other awesome content I would otherwise miss out on without lag and without buffering. Private internet access is also faster than other VPNs for file sharing, so you can download anonymously, but without the long wait times. Anyone can use private internet access. Just turn it on once and forget about it. No special knowledge required. And you can use it on all of your devices, TV, phone, tablet, computer. Private internet access is giving my audience 83% off, which comes out to just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is in the description. The David Pakman Show hasn't changed in terms of how we are funded. No matter what you read online about Russian influencer cash, it has nothing to do with us. We have been and continue to be primarily funded by viewers, people who listen to the podcast, people who watch YouTube clips or TikToks or whatever. You go to joinpakman.com, you sign up, you can use the coupon code MUTETRUMP or the coupon code SaveDemocracy24, and you'll get the bonus show, the commercial-free audio feed, the commercial-free video feed, the members-only soundboard, invitations to the members-only town hall events. You'll get all of it at whatever price you choose to pay based on using or not using the coupon code. It's simple and it's clear, and RT and Putin aren't in the middle of it. You can sign up at joinpakman.com. There was a very interesting moment on CNN when Lara, and Lara Trump went on to be interviewed. And what was so interesting about this moment, and the reason I want to show it to you, is that Lara Trump was confronted with Donald Trump's claims of voter fraud, not so much generically, but specifically when it comes to mail-in ballots. And Lara Trump sort of tries to explain why Trump's statements are coherent, but they're not. And it is really a reminder that when these claims are subjected to any serious scrutiny, they fall apart, particularly in the context of what happened during the debate between Trump and Harris on Tuesday night, when it was so egregious and outrageous for Trump to say, I did win 2020 or whatever, however he phrased it. I got more votes than ever and all this stuff. It's a reminder that just because there are thousands of hours of this stuff on Rumble and on right-wing YouTube channels, and it all seems like, wow, it sounds like they're saying it so much, and I'm not hearing any counterpoint, maybe it's true. As soon as you subject it to scrutiny, it all falls apart. Let's take a listen.
Lara, I also want to ask you about something he posted recently on Truth Social, where he actually called on the RNC, the organization you're a co-chair of, to activate now. And this was around mail-in voting. He said, he was quoting Tucker Carlson here with an election expert, that 20% of mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania are fraudulent.
Fraud.
Here we go again. Where is the Attorney General, the FBI to investigate? Where is the Republican Party in Pennsylvania? The RNC must activate now. Now, in August, the RNC, your RNC, and the Trump campaign launched a Get Out to Vote tool where Pennsylvania voters can request a mail-in ballot directly. Is the former president saying that Republicans in Pennsylvania should not ask for these ballots?
And no, quite the opposite. Donald Trump wants every voter, no matter if you're voting Republican, Democrat, or third-party candidate, to feel comfortable that you can vote.
20% of them are fraudulent?
He's specifically referencing information from the 2020 election. What we're talking about right now is making sure that every vote matters and every vote counts. And I've worked very hard.
What information do we have?
RNC.
What evidence is there that 20% of the mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania in 2020 were fraudulent?
I didn't see that report, so I'd have to go back and look at it. So I can't directly speak to that. But what I can tell you is
what a surprise.
Worked very hard on the ground at the RNC to make sure every voter in this country feels like when you cast a ballot, whether it's via mail, whether it's early voting in person, or whether it's on election day in an election office around the country, your vote matters and your vote counts. And Donald Trump very much wants every Republican voter to vote however they feel most comfortable, and every voter in this country to vote however they feel most comfortable. So I would have to go back and look at that. I have not studied that.
Now, I'm not going to pick on CNN, but I want to point out a couple different things that are important to mention here. First of all, she allows Lara Trump to get away with Trump was referencing information from 2020. I don't think so. If you actually look at the post, Trump didn't seem to be saying this was a problem back in 2020. Trump seems to be saying that this is a problem now, and it's about why now we have to do this, that, the other thing, and invoke all of these different major actions in order to stop the illegal votes and all of this different stuff. I think Lara Trump was let off a little too easy on that. But more importantly, this whole concept of Donald just wants everybody to vote however they're most comfortable. And that's why now he's talking sometimes about mail-in early, this, that, the other thing, even though at times past he would say it's all completely fraudulent. You have to apply a filter. You know, sometimes we say looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. You have to apply a filter of what's actually best for me. In 2020, Trump calculated anything other than same-day in-person voting is bad for me. Why? COVID. He correctly assessed probably that his voters aren't going to have any hesitation to go stand around large groups of people on election day, but that Biden voters might because they are more conscious of the pandemic. And so Trump calculated, if I try to shut down every other way to vote that doesn't expose people to pathogens and say you must go in and stand around the big crowds, it probably helps me. That's the filter, the prism through which Trump saw it. In the intervening 4 years, as the midterms didn't go too well, as these other forms of voting, they're not really other forms of voting, other schedules of voting, either early or by mail, et cetera, have become more normalized and mainstream and just kind of part of how we vote, as they should be, because most developed countries have versions of these. Trump now realized, wait a second, telling people not to do that stuff probably hurts me at this point in time. So now I have to say that it's good, except anecdotally, I'm being convinced that it's not good. So Trump is in this impossible pretzel, as he always is. Voting early and by mail is bad, except he did it in 2020 and he did it in 2024 in the primary. You know, as we saw, Florida, but that's different because it's Pennsylvania's where the problem, Florida's no problem. So he's in this ridiculous position. And the absurdity of it trickles down, where you end up with Lara Trump on CNN having to just lie and go, oh, no, when he said the thing about the mail-in ballots and fraud, he was referring to 2020, even though he was clearly referring to now. This is what you end up with. And to a normal person with average critical thinking ability, you see this and you just say to yourself, these are just lies. There's no basis in fact here. These are lies. We've heard from the people paid to go and find the fraud, people like my guest, Ken Block, and he has explained beyond satisfactorily that this is not happening. The people claiming it is happening seem mentally ill, like Mike Prillo, for example. It just doesn't make any sense. And yet they continue to go on TV and claim it because they are still kissing the ring. And of course, I mean, her last name is Trump. Of course, she has to go and say that. There's more that could be done here as far as pushing back, but it is increasingly clear that this is just nonsense. And it doesn't seem voters are actually falling for it in any significant capacity at this point in time. CNN did something funny the other day. Jim Acosta played a Trump cognitive decline reel. You know, a little bit later on in the show, I am going to hit corporate media hard for the fact that there is a complete and total double standard when it comes to the way that Joe Biden's cognitive state was covered, particularly in the aftermath of the June 27th debate, and the way that Donald Trump's brain has been covered, or maybe better said, not covered, for the last many years. And that is the totality of the story. Corporate media has had a huge double standard, and you can occasionally crowbar into corporate media a story about Trump's brain. But good for Jim Acosta. He played a little Trump cognitive gaffe reel the other day. And you like to see
David,
this.
I mean, this is different from the last debate between Donald Trump and President Biden. Democrats are pointing out Trump is now the oldest of the two candidates by nearly 2 decades this time around, and voters may be focused on his age and mental acuity. Last week, he gave a rambling response to a question about child care policy, and it's not the first time we've heard him rambling about. Let's listen to some of what he said on the campaign trail recently.
The late, great Hannibal Lecter is a wonderful man He oftentimes would have a friend for dinner. This is inflation. This is tic-tac. This is tic-tac. This is inflation. This is what's happened. But you know what I'd do if there was a shark or you get electrocuted? I'll take electrocution every single time. I'm not getting near the shark. So we're going to end that. We're going to end it for boats. We're going to end it for trucks. You can do it, baby. I love you so much. And it's bad news. Bad things are happening. Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, I didn't do a poem. Didn't do it. Ding, 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 ding. They've only got 17 seconds to figure this whole thing out, right? Boom. Okay. Missile launch. Pshin, boom.
Pashim, boom. Bing, 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 bing. Pushin, boom. Okay. So listen, the correct thing, if you wanted to say, hey, what's the evidence? What are the facts? How should corporate media behave? The correct thing would have been that for years now, they would have been covering the very obvious problems that Donald Trump is having. They would have had the experts on to analyze, as we have been doing. They would have been having the serious and tough conversations about whether Trump has what it takes to even run for office, never mind be president again. They haven't been doing it, and we're going to address that bigger picture in a little bit. But you still like to see this occasionally on CNN. Now, I would even argue CNN doesn't seem as well acquainted with sort of like the biggest glitches and gaffes. I think that's another thing where they're not even really selecting the worst ones.
Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your...
Right. But listen, they're doing a little something. So I give them like a 2 out of 10. At least they are mentioning it. I'll deal with the bigger picture of that a little bit later. It's been very entertaining in a way and troubling to see the evolution of Nikki Haley justifying why she is supporting Donald Trump. Now, I want to preface everything I'm about to say by telling you that Nikki Haley is disgusted by Trump, hates Trump, doesn't think he should be president. Deep down, this is my opinion, and I believe it's an opinion based in the things that she has actually said over the last many years until it came time to kiss the ring and endorse Trump. So all of this is a farce for public consumption. Earlier in the week, I played for you a video of Nikki Haley explaining on ABC why she is supporting Donald Trump. And of course, it's weird that she would, given that she said he is just flat out unfit to be president and many other horrible things she said about him. But her argument was essentially that, well, Kamala's bad. It's just Kamala's bad, and he is the Republican nominee, and I'm a Republican. And it's all about self-preservation. She thinks this gives her a better shot at continuing to have a path to major national politics for the Republican Party. Maybe she's right, maybe she's wrong. Well, she appeared on CNBC, and there are hosts on CNBC who aren't so good, and there are hosts on CNBC who do a pretty good job, and I think Andrew Ross Sorkin, especially in these sorts of interviews, does a pretty good job. And Nikki Haley's new approach to why we need Trump back, even if you don't like his personality, is that things are just worse since Biden's become president. And Andrew Ross Sorkin correctly points out, certainly not as far as the stock market's concerned.
We can't afford 4 more years. Find me one American that says that they were better the last 4 years than the ones before it. You can't find it. So let's.
I can tell you, most of the people who actually have any stock in this market would tell you that, actually.
Average,
they would.
Average Americans.
And by the way, not enough Americans own stock in the market, but 44% of the Americans would.
Average Americans, if you ask them, they're just trying to make ends meet.
Now, of course, there's so much more to this. Inflation has come down to where we want it to be. We actually saw a decline in food prices in August. All-time high after all-time high in the stock market. Yes, not all Americans own stock, but if you combine all Americans that own stock, all Americans that have a 401k or market-based retirement plan, right, you start putting together all of these different groups. They're all pretty happy with all-time high after all-time high. Job creation significantly higher than under Trump, meaning many new people found jobs. You can't make this case. And Nikki now is trying to say, this isn't about personalities. Yes, I've said some things about Trump personality-wise. Okay. But things are terrible now. And they were better under Trump, and that's why we need Trump. Nikki Haley also tried justify voting for Trump by claiming that we are technically in World War III right now. We are not in World War III right now.
In the Senate. Now, the question is, Pat Toomey, Dick Cheney, GW, they all have the same story. You know, I think Kamala Harris is an absolute nightmare, but I can't bring myself to. It's a vote for Kamala Harris. They can't find a scintilla of difference between. It's a binary choice. As a Republican, I guess you honor their decision.
I respect it.
I think
everybody comes.
But you're going to vote for Trump.
I'm thinking about my kids, the future of this next 4 years and what that means for America.
And it doesn't mean the end of democracy and a police state and a dictator on day one.
Look, we're in World War III right now. If you look at the fact that Russia has invaded Ukraine, you look at the fact that Hamas has invaded Israel, you look at China using aggression on Taiwan, you see the fentanyl.
Okay, so Hamas didn't invade Israel, and fentanyl does not World War III make. We are not in World War III. This is really a reach. But think about, this is the wildest thing. Nikki Haley says she's voting for Trump because she's thinking about her kids. You know, Nikki's daughter is married to a black guy. And their kids, if they have any, are going to be biracial children in America. She wants us to believe that having a biracial woman president who respects women's bodily autonomy, has a perspective on job creation that makes sense and is backed by economists, has an economic plan that makes sense and is supported by even Goldman Sachs, which is no left-wing institution, says this is better for the economy. On what planet can Nikki Haley think about the future for her kids and potentially her grandkids and say they are better off not with the model of a competent and confident biracial woman, first woman president of the United States, but with Donald Trump as president? And you all know Nikki Haley is smart enough that she doesn't really believe that. It's disgusting that she's willing to say this stuff, given that she obviously doesn't believe it. Nikki Haley, if she hadn't jumped the shark before, she certainly has now. Yikes. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Many of you have been writing to me about this idea that there's a plan in place to steal the election for Republicans, for Trump, and that's why Trump says, doesn't really matter if Nikki Haley supporters vote for me. This is why they don't seem worried by the concerning polls in so many critical states. And what many of you have written to me about is the potential plan to disrupt polling places such that people just aren't able to vote or choose not to vote because of intimidation that's going on. And I want to take this seriously because to some degree, we know that they're planning it. To some degree, they've said, we want law enforcement. Keep an eye, Trump said. Keep an eye. We need our police officers keeping an eye on people at the polling places, suggesting intimidation. We've heard about plans to have election workers challenging voters' eligibility and all these different things. But this is a bigger question. This is a question of straight up disrupting and creating chaos at polling places. So here's sort of like a little outline of how Trump and Trump supporters might try to suppress voting in just a few weeks with civil unrest, like straight up generating chaos. So first and foremost, how would they plan it? We know how they would plan it. It's social media platforms, the encrypted apps, the Telegram, the Signal, straight in broad daylight in the comment sections of Rumble and Truth Central and whatever else. And what they would plan to do is do mass gatherings at key polling locations. They would focus on battleground states. You might say, oh, but that's not a strategy you can do nationally. They don't need to do it nationally. There's no reason to do this in California. Trump's going to lose California by millions of votes. They would say, here's the 5 states most likely to determine this election. And those states right now seem like they would be, I mean, listen, certainly Pennsylvania, Georgia. It's looking like North Carolina could be one of those. Arizona, Nevada. If you want to make it 6 states, you include Wisconsin in there, right? You can say, here's 4, 5, 6 states. These are the key states. Let's find the critical polling locations that we know skew left. So you say, all right, here's my 5 key states. The rural votes in these states are more Trump leaning. The urban votes in these states are more Democratic leaning. So we will target the urban polling places in these 5 states. And then you start spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories about voter fraud and rigged elections. That justifies the need for being there on election day. And then you just start organizing groups of agitators. Say, here's the polling stations, here's the states, urban areas, predominantly minority voters, and use rhetoric about, we've got to protect the vote. That's why we're going to be here. So then election day comes. They mobilize these groups. If it's legal to carry guns in certain states within certain numbers of feet of the polling places, they go as far as you can legally go. Maybe they go beyond the law too, but they certainly go as far as you can legally go with the displays of weapons. They create a sense of chaos outside the polling places. Where they can, they try to blockade or appear to blockade entrances at polling stations, make it difficult for people to get in, especially during the peak voting hours. This will start generating multiple things. Number one, it will start generating longer and longer lines as the polling places may be understaffed to deal with this. Number two, they begin to generate chaos as police start being called out, and the presence of police and crowds starts to create a sort of chaotic, disrupted effect for people who show up and want to vote. And then, and this is where it can get more risky, you start provoking civil unrest. You stage confrontations, maybe with law enforcement or election officials, and try to provoke a response that maybe gets some of these polling places shut down. You engage in clashes with counter-protesters, or if there's no counter-protesters, with voters themselves to make people say, do I want to vote? It looks like this could get violent. I'm getting scared off. Is it safe here? I'm just not sure. And then maybe you even utilize the large gatherings to try to overwhelm the polling places, and maybe some of them say, we've got to temporarily shut down. Now, all of this is always based on a sort of undergirding of misinformation. You use disinformation campaigns in advance, and while this is going on, you say, hey, these polling places are under attack, don't go. Causes confusion. People are working, they're planning to vote between getting out of work at 4:45 and picking up their kids at 5:15. Oh, I don't know, I've heard it's dangerous, maybe I don't go. Any even remotely chaotic or violent incident, you amplify it, which further creates unrest and creates the need for more armed police response. And in the middle of all of it, you start pushing news. We have learned of large-scale election fraud. They are stealing the entire thing. Get out there and help us physically intervene to stop the fraud. And if they're smart, which, smart, clever, I don't know the right word. If they're prepared, they simultaneously have lawyers ready with lawsuits or legal maneuvers to say operations at these polling places are illegal. By the way, they will argue the chaos they caused now means the polling place must be shut down, or we can't guarantee the integrity of the ballots. They must be discounted or whatever. And then you just keep it going after Election Day for as long as you can. Now, do I think that this is likely? The full plan I just outlined, I don't think is actually likely. At the same time, they've admitted that some elements of this they plan to do. Lawyers ready for spurious legal arguments, they have. So check, that they have. The desire to see voters intimidated, either by law enforcement or protesters or adversarial election workers, that they have. We know they have that. What we don't know is whether the plan as I just outlined it is something that they're really thinking about. But a dozen or so of you have written to me saying it's what you're worried about, and I understand the concern. Donald Trump is 78 years old and barely coherent, but there is only a fraction of the discussion in corporate media of Trump's incoherence as there was compared to Joe Biden after the June 27th debate. This is a story we've been following for a very long time at this point. USA Today has a nice article about it by Rex Hupke. The article is called "Trump is 78 and barely coherent. Where's everyone who questioned Biden's age and fitness? Where are the headlines screaming deranged old man peddles nonsense while threatening violent deportation of immigrants?" And Rex goes through in this article and kind of summarizes just recently Trump's incoherence. His answer here about how will you bring down the cost of childcare, which was a verbal ink blot, just nonsense. And the argument that Rex makes, and it's an accurate argument and it's a good one, is that Donald Trump's bizarre rants get sanitized, whereas Biden got no special treatment. And that's absolutely correct. It is absolutely, completely and totally obvious that that's what's happening. We've talked about the term sane washing. Trump gives a completely disjointed response, and it's summarized as Trump spoke passionately. Really? Not necessarily how I would summarize it. So what really needs to be understood here is that there is really no way to maintain even a semblance of Trump as a real candidate unless you completely ignore the incoherence and the obvious decline. How many mental health and medical professionals have we now had analyzing what's happening to Trump from a mental health standpoint, from a neurological standpoint, from a dementia Alzheimer's standpoint, from a cult standpoint, from an ego narcissism standpoint, and yet partially assisted by the corporate media's refusal, dare I say this guy doesn't make any sense. Is this guy stable? He seems worse than Biden on most days. That is part of why this continues to happen. Now, you'll occasionally hear, Jessica Tarlov on Fox News will say, did you guys see that rant? It didn't make any sense. Trump talks about needing ID to buy bread. He talks about the president is Obama, or he's running against Obama, or he's running against Hillary, or he defeated Obama, or whatever. You occasionally see it. But if this was being handled responsibly, and I would say even just objectively by corporate media, we would have been seeing stories about Trump's decline dating back years rather than the occasional, he was a little bit jumbled here and there. And then one other thing I want to say about this. If you want to talk about double standards, Trump said he doesn't want your vote in an election. If you voted for Nikki Haley, or if you're Jewish and you're thinking voting Democrat, or large swath of voters that he goes, don't give a damn, don't need him, don't want him. Imagine if Kamala Harris had done that. It would be months of coverage in corporate media, but almost nothing when it's Trump that says it. Imagine if a Democrat ran for president, convicted of 34 felonies, owing tens of millions of dollars for defaming his sexual assault victim, as Trump does, owing money for business and tax fraud, facing all sorts of other charges, which through reasons we don't really know, but they include judges you've selected helping you out, are getting the cases pushed off beyond the election. Imagine if a Democrat were running with that record, what we would be seeing in corporate media. Think what happened when Barack Obama wore a tan suit. So as we talked about with Tristan Snell earlier this week, the justice system seems weaponized in favor of Donald Trump. The corporate media infrastructure seems weaponized in favor of Donald Trump. And so the only solution, I spoke with Mark Elias about it, spoke about it with Brian Tyler Cohen and Tyler Brian Cohen and Tyler Cohen as well. Everybody's been speaking to me about it. We need a victory so large that they can't figure out a way to steal it. And we put Trump in the dustbin of history. That's what needs to happen with Trump. It's what needs to happen with MAGA. Will it happen? Well, we'll know in just a few weeks. I've got good news and bad news, and they're both the same. We'll know the answer in just a few weeks. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. It's that time of the week. It is time for Friday Feedback, where we feature messages, comments, replies, smoke signals, telegrams, and snail mail delivered to us by our audience. The best place to write to is info@davidpakman.com, but YouTube comments, TikTok replies, etc. will often be featured. We start today with one of these classic incoherent messages, just a little palate cleanser, or whatever the opposite of a palate cleanser is. Jim wrote in. I don't even know what this guy's talking about. Jim says, I think the total of insults towards Trump outnumbers and outweigh any amount of Trump insults of this disabled man. Hitler, racist, fat, narcissist, Russian asset. Let's see you, so brave, so principled Parkman, withstand the slings and arrows of all you libtards talking heads, or from anyone when directed to you. You would wilt like a little whiny girl. Have a nice day. I don't know. I don't know. I think Trump, it's funny. When Jim refers to Trump insulting a disabled man, Trump has insulted so many people with disabilities that I don't know who Jim is referring to. And part of me wonders whether Jim is arguing that Biden is the disabled guy that Trump is insulting. Complete and total incoherence. But here's what I really want people to think about. Close your eyes and imagine Jim putting down his phone after sending me this message. I'm going to do it too. Jim puts down his phone after sending me this message. And then he turns around and he gets back to his desk and he picks up the phone and he says, Jim's accounting services, how can I help you? Imagine that Jim is your CPA or your kid's middle school teacher or whatever. The point here is, these people are in our society. They, at least theoretically, might be providing you some kind of service, or your kids, if you can imagine. That's extraordinarily terrifying. And also many of them vote, which is just a reminder as to why we need to vote in November as well. Ryan DeGrave commented on YouTube, Tim Midwest Giga Chad Walls is an excellent choice and the right choice. He's great on TV. He appeals to basically everyone who's not a psychopath. He's literate and well-spoken, yet sounds like a normal person, is relatable, and gives those of us interested in a better future hope that the party might finally be leaning to the left again instead of pandering to the right. I agree completely with Ryan about many of the great reasons why Tim Walz is a fantastic choice. But with regard to the leaning left versus right, there are some people angry a little bit with some of the polling we've been doing. We did another poll on the YouTube channel. 160,000 of you voted. The question was, Kamala Harris recently said she would appoint a Republican to her cabinet if elected. Do you agree she should? 74% of my audience said yes. Kamala should appoint a Republican to her cabinet. Only 26% of you said no. The subreddits and the Twitter trolls love taking screenshots of these polls and saying, look at how Pakman, or Parkman as they usually misspell it, look at how Pakman's audience is so right-wing. 74% of them want a Republican in Harris's cabinet. Can you imagine? And I just want to remind everybody that my audience is to my left. What you are seeing reflected in these polls is a practical understanding of how politics works. And I see nothing wrong with Kamala Harris selecting nominally a Republican, a moderate Republican, to a position that is of less consequence. I don't want to rank cabinet members, okay? It's not about you're better or worse, but I'm just saying not every cabinet position is as prominent, right? I don't see anything wrong with putting a Republican with whom you're basically roughly on the same page with regard to the specific siloed area they would be working on to show I'm bipartisan. I can work with Republicans. There are reasonable Republicans. It's not just we hate all of these people. I think there is a lot of political value in that. And that's what my audience is recognizing. It's not, oh, David, your audience is so right wing. This is strategy. This is a pragmatic approach to politics. Okay. Sherry Sanchez wrote, I'll vote for the pair that are rooting for the success of this country, not the pair actively rooting for us to fail for their benefit. Tough to sum up the contrast between Harris-Walz and Trump-Vance better than that. You tune in to a Trump or Vance rally, and it's this country has gone to hell, 1929 style crash if Kamala Harris wins. It's communism. It's Marxism. The gender affirming surgeons have taken over our schools, and now kids are getting trans surgery in school, is the way Trump put it. It's all terrible. The country used to be great. It's no longer great. Here's all the things I'm going to do. And it's going to be a bloody removal of undocumented immigrants. And wow, that's like a really scary vision. Even if Trump gets to do the things he wants to do, it sounds terrible. On the other hand, Harris-Walz says, hey, you know what? We have political differences, but there are things we can all agree upon. We have some basic institutions and a framework of democracy that we must defend. And we can disagree about the top tax rate. We can disagree about to what degree should states determine completely what the educational programs in public schools should be. Or right, we can have disagreements, but we have a shared vision that maintains the country as a democratic country with the parameters and guardrails that were meant to be in place based on how the Constitution and Bill of Rights were set up. And here's 10 ideas about how to make things better. We're going to make things better for those who have children but struggle to pay. We're going to make things better for those who are looking for factory jobs. We're going to make things better for those who have an idea that they want to do, but they don't want to lose health care at the job that they hate. Okay. It couldn't be a more different vision. And Sherry really accurately outlines that. Now, completely different scenario. Jay Scorpion says, ass ho, vote Trump. Okay. So yeah, that's a different vision. That's a different vision of what to do. Greg Black wrote in on Facebook and says, Pack Punk, do you believe your own bullshit? I sure hope so, because nobody, KNOW space body, KNOW space body, nobody else does. She needs to win Pennsylvania, and it's tied right now, and she got no bump after the DNC. Well, listen, insults aside, it is true that Pennsylvania is tied right now. As I've said, it's going to be close. I don't know how Pennsylvania being tied contradicts anything I've said. It is not true that Kamala Harris got no bump from the DNC. She got about 0.6 of a point, but Trump seems to have taken momentum back. That's true also. So the fact that Greg identifies correctly that this is potentially going to be a very close race doesn't really make the non sequitur insults anything that I'm super impressed by. Here's another comment from YouTube. Not running for president, running from prison, relating to Donald Trump. Yeah, there are many who write in and say, David, what Trump is doing is very transparent. He sees becoming president as the best way to stay out of prison, especially now with his sentencing delayed until after the election. And I don't disagree with you. The only part that raises a little bit of a red flag for me is if Trump really sees becoming president as the way to stay out of prison, you'd think he'd be campaigning a little more strongly. He wouldn't be doing just one rally a week or less if he saw that the way to maintain his freedom was to become president of the United States. That's the one part of it that sounds a little bit strange to me. Okay, here's a very interesting comment from YouTube. I'm a gun owner. I love my guns. I love the Second Amendment, but I don't love Trump. The future of this country is much more important to me, which is why I'm voting for Harris 2024. We're not going back. I think he means we're not going back. Yeah, listen, I have friends who are very moderate. Yeah, they do mostly vote for Democrats nationally, but often vote for Republicans at the state level. And they own guns. They are socially on the left-ish, but not extremely so. They have concerns about a lot of the cultural stuff, but they are saying to me the same thing. They are saying, we have a Second Amendment. Kamala Harris isn't going to take my guns. She's not trying to. And this is about more than what you sometimes see made the issues on social media. And a very practical question is, okay, if there's a bunch of these folks in Tennessee, well, Kamala Harris is not going to win Tennessee. But if there's enough of these folks in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, the election could very well hinge on it. So we're all going to be paying very close attention to those sorts of folks. Finally, we did a poll. Did Joe Biden do the right thing by getting out of this race? 217,000 of you voted. 55% wanted Biden to drop out and are glad that he did. 41% didn't want Biden to drop out, but now are glad that he did. 96% of my audience, we never see such a united front on anything. 96% of my audience believes that it was the right decision for Joe Biden to drop out. That's very optimistic when it comes to, can we believe in the newfound energy behind Kamala Harris, or is it just window dressing? The fact that 96% of the audience is saying, oh, no. Whether I thought so or not at the start, I have come to believe it was right for Biden to drop out. That bodes very well for people actually getting out to vote for Kamala Harris, hopefully in the states that are going to make a difference. All right, we've got a fantastic program on the bonus show for you. Make sure you are signed up at joinpacman.com. Please remember to pre-order my forthcoming nonfiction book, The Echo Machine. I will have updated order numbers for you on Monday. You can order the book at davidpacman.com/echo, Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble. It is now available for pre-order. It should be at every local bookstore. If you live next to, Sam's Books in Milwaukee or Samantha's Books in Austin, Texas, those are made up. You should now be able to call up any bookstore and say, I want to order David Pacman's The Echo Machine from Beacon Press, and they should be able to get it for you for the release date, and you will qualify for the signed book plate. So get those orders in. I'll update you on numbers next Monday. Enjoy the bonus show. Have a good weekend. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. The only VPN to prove multiple times in court that they have no record of your internet activity is private internet access. Each time the judge said, show us the person's internet activity, and private internet access said, sorry, we don't have it. Their systems are also regularly audited by Deloitte to verify the no-log policy. And it's the only VPN with open source code, so the whole world can see that nothing is being logged. Private internet access is giving my audience 83% off, which is just $203 a month plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is down below.